Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello and welcome again to the Clarity Advisor Show. We're coming to the end of 2022, and that got me thinking about lessons learned from this year. And it got me thinking bigger picture of lessons learned kind of over the years. A question I love when people ask me, and I like to ask people, is what would you, as your current self, tell your past self? What would your 40-something self tell your 20-something self? And it really gets to what advice would you give to younger people or people starting out? Now, I don't think that means we shouldn't listen. If you're 29 or over, this isn't for you. I'm still taking this advice and I'm still looking for advice. And I think that's part of life, is that we're always looking to take the lessons that we can learn, whether there's something we learn through our experience or hear from other people. But in reflecting upon this year, I really got to thinking about what are those maybe 5 things that I would tell my 20 something self starting out. And the first one is make friends. Every opportunity comes from other people. So if you want more opportunities, you need to know more people. And people like to help their friends. We all like to help our friends. And so you need to make friends. And the key to making friends, oddly enough, is to be friendly. My best advice for people going to networking events is don't find out what people do and make sure they know what you do and make sure you trade business cards and contact information, but just make friends. If you end up only talking to one person at a networking event, that's okay. If you end up talking to 10 or so or more people at a networking event, that's okay. Just be friendly and look to make friends. Friends, as we know from our life experience, sort themselves out. Some people are great friends and we get better and get more connected over time. And others, we just meet 1 or 2 times and then it kind of drifts away. And that's okay. We're not necessarily looking to find our best friend ever, but we don't know. It's like the old direct mail system. If we'd send out 100 letters, remember letters in the mail with a stamp? You sent out 100 letters, good direct mailers expected a 3% response rate. They expected 3 people to do something with that. And it's not too far off with email these days. People blast out emails expecting a 3% response rate. Listen, if you knew the 3 people, you would just send it to them, but you don't. So you need to send it to 100. So make friends with 100 people, and 3 of them are going to turn out to be good friends. They're going to turn out to be good contacts and connections. And friends like to introduce people to their friends, right? We all like to make those connections. And do you know this person? You should know this person. And that's how you build a great network, is by being friendly and making friends. Another part of that is to ask questions. Andy Andrews says the quality of your answers depends on the quality of your questions. So ask good questions. One that I really like to ask people when I find out what they do is, how did you get into that? 9 times out of 10, the answer starts with, oh, that's a funny story. It's always a funny story because it's always unique to them. And it always feels interesting to them because they didn't think they were going to end up there, but they did. And so there's this journey that's never this nice straight line, but it kind of wound around and got there. And it's interesting. And people like to tell their story. And it's a great way to connect. So ask people, how did you get there? How did you get into that? Great question to ask. And just in general, listen more than you talk, especially as a young person. That doesn't mean you don't know stuff, but you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. You want to give them the respect of listening to them. One of the greatest gifts you can give another person is the gift of listening. People love to tell their story and they love to share information. You just got to ask and then really listen and make sure that they're feeling heard, that they're feeling like you're really interested. So actually be interested. If your friend was telling you a story, you'd be interested. So be interested and make friends. So now you got to balance this with, figure it out, because there's quality questions and then there's just quantity of questions. Sometimes you want to ask just a lot of questions like, how does this work? And then what did you do? And how did you get into that? And some of that stuff you can maybe figure out yourself. You don't need to ask everything on your mind. Again, think about being friendly. This is a person that you're connecting with. This isn't You're not doing an interrogation. You're not trying to fill out a questionnaire. You're just trying to get to know that person. So some things you can figure out on your own. You don't need to ask every question, but ask a lot of questions and then listen. So make friends is my first bit of advice. Number two is stick with something. And again, I think each one of these 5 things has its counterpoint. So the counterpoint to asking a lot of questions and being friendly is you're only going to make friends with maybe 3 people out of 100, and some things you can figure out. Well, the counterpoint here is when I say stick with something, but you might also need to try a lot of different things. But first, stick with something. The idea of stick with something is it's going to take time to learn what you need to know in any given job or any given kind of work. And so you're going to need a 2, 3, 5, maybe 10-year run at something before you really know something well enough to be considered an expert. And you're going to want to become an expert in something because generally in careers, you're going to have something that's your kind of go-to base of knowledge. Now, you might know a lot of things outside that, but there's that one thing where you started that you really know well. And that could be working with small teams. That could be working in a certain industry. That could be a certain type of process or a certain type of customer you have experience with. It could be a lot of different things, but it needs to be something. And as big a fan as I am of the 80-20 rule, that is, you can get 80% of the knowledge by doing 20% of the work, or you can get 80% of the results from 20% of the work. That tends to work. But you got to balance that with the idea that it's also good to get the 100%, to actually spend the other 80% of the time to get that last 20%, to be the comprehensive expert, to have seen kind of everything there is to see in that area. I had a young leader come to me one time. She had been in her position for about 4 months. And it was her first leadership role. And she said, I think I'm ready to move on because I've learned everything there is to know about leading a team. And it was all I could do to not laugh out loud because it's just so obviously not true. There's so much to learn. We're never really done. No one's ever the master, especially when it comes to things with people. No one's ever the master of leadership and of leading people. And so to think that you could have accomplished that in 4 months is pretty funny. Now, that said, she probably did get, maybe not 80%, but a big chunk of what you need to know, the basics, in a short period of time. But where the value is spending that extra time, that other 80% or whatever the number is, to get that last little bit. So maybe in 4 months, she learned on leadership, I would say she probably only learned like 30 or 40%. But it's going to take years and years, and you'll probably never get to the 100. But let's say you want to learn about how retail store operations work. Yeah, in the first couple of months, you'll probably learn about 80% of how it works. But to really get those last details and to see all the edge cases and exceptions, well, that's probably going to be years worth of work. But it's worth it to spend those years in that one area to get your 100%. Now, back to the flip side of try a lot of different things. I'm not saying wherever you are right now, you need to spend the next 5 years doing it because you got to dig in and get some grit and have a track record at something. Yes, you do, but it doesn't have to be that thing you're in currently. It's okay to look around and say, nah, this isn't really for me. I think I'm going to try something different. But at some point, and I would suggest that at some point in your 20s, you dig in and make a run at something and get all the experience that there is to get and get that, whatever it turns out to be, 80, 85, 90, 95% of all the things that could be learned kind of in that space. And at that point, it just becomes repetition. Now you've kind of seen it, you know what to do, it becomes comfortable, and maybe you want to take it to the next level, but maybe you're ready to move on to something else. But at least you've been all the way through the cycle on one thing. So I think it's important to stick with something. It also just builds grit. Grit is a great skill. There's a great book by Angela Duckworth, cleverly titled Grit. You can also watch her YouTube, lots of ways to get the information about this. But the idea is that sticking with something builds character, and it's hard to do. And if it was easy to do, lots more people would get a lot more accomplished. And so it's helpful to have grit, and grinding something out, doing something day by day is how you build success over the long term. And it's not as fun as watching a YouTube video and becoming a millionaire overnight, but it's much more the reality, and it's a much more controllable, achievable, proven process. And so getting that grit, I used to tell my kids when they were younger, we tended to have kids that either were kind of good with language skills, like they liked English and they liked history and they liked writing and reading, or they liked kind of math and science and physics. I said, listen, we're good either way. Because if you like math and science and physics, then you're gonna have a great time. We're gonna learn a ton of math and physics. And you know what we're gonna, and they're like, well, I don't have to do all that like English and history stuff. Do you? Like, oh no, no, we're totally gonna do that because that is gonna build grit. You're gonna learn how to grind through the thing you don't really like to get the result that you want, which is a good education. And flip it around. If you're the person who really loves those humanities things, and I love English and I love writing and reading, I hate science and math. Well, guess what? Going through science and math is going to build grit. And it's the same in life. You find that project or that career or that job opportunity and maybe you don't like it, but you're going to just grind through it because I need to make my run and get through it. So there's value in that grit. There's value in just grinding through something. Now, don't make it agonizing. Don't make it that you hate it. We'll talk about that when we get to number 5. But there's some value in doing this thing for the sake of just doing the thing and having gotten on the other side of it. So you get that one, but stick with something. At some point, stick with something. If you need to move around at first and find different things to kind of find your group, that's great. But once you find something that you think you can do for a few years, do it for a few years. All right. Number 3, do more than is expected. Pretty straightforward. Just do more. Go that extra mile. Go the second mile after somebody asks you to go one. It's not just for their benefit that they're going to get more from you than maybe they're paying you for, but it's going to be for your benefit. You're going to feel better about what you've done and you're just going to learn more faster. If we're going to make this run and grind something out for a few years, well, let's grab everything we can. And how you do that is putting more into it. You're going to get more than you put in out of it. So put in more than you think you need to, and you'll get even more back out of it. And trust me, as somebody who's hired and worked with lots and lots of people, it gets noticed. As a leader in upper management and top management, it gets noticed. You hear the names of those people who are putting in extra effort at all levels. You might think, oh, I'm just this line worker. I'm the store clerk at a retail store. I'm an operator on a machine line in a manufacturing company. Nobody even knows my name. If you put in more than is expected consistently and you're doing above and beyond consistently, it's going to get noticed. People are going to know who you are. And now what's going to happen? Now you're going to get plugged into some circles where you're going to have a chance to go back to number 1 here and make some friends and meet some people you might not have otherwise met and have some connections you might not have otherwise had. So it's always also just beneficial to you. You're going to feel better about what you're doing. You're going to know that you're putting your all into something and it's going to benefit you in the long run. So just do more than is expected. All right, number 4, work-life balance. I both love and hate that phrase. I think there's something to keeping in mind that life is more than your job. But I don't like the phrase of work-life balance specifically because it kind of puts them against each other. Like life is where all the fun stuff is. Life is when you get to do what you want. Life is vacation and the weekend, and work, well, that's the weekday and the 8 to 5 and the thing that I hate. And on Sunday night, I dread it. And on Friday, I can't wait. It pits them against each other. And I just don't believe that's how we're made. I believe that we were made to work, not necessarily to have a job. And maybe that's the distinction to have in your head is don't think about, I need to have a job as much as I need to work. I think we're made to work. We're made to produce. We're made to create. And you know this in your own life, when you just consume, and consumption's never been easier. There's always something on your phone that you can be watching, listening to, whatever, podcasts, videos. You can just sit there and scroll on Facebook or whatever app, and there's always something to consume. You just sit there and it comes at you, and you can just consume it, consume it, consume it. And it feels good. And those guys have all figured out how to hit you with the dopamine just enough to keep you engaged and all that. You can sit on your couch for days if you want to. At the end of that, though, you don't always feel great. Kind of feel like after you just ate the bag of chips and maybe you were consuming content while you're eating the bag of chips, so you feel doubly bad. But that's just, we're not going to feel good in the end because it's not what we were made to do. We're made to produce and create. So we're going to have to go work. Now, it doesn't mean a job. It doesn't mean a job that you hate. It doesn't mean dreading Mondays and loving Fridays and living for the weekend, because we want to find work that's meaningful. We want to find work that we can feel good about. And so we want to balance that work life in that we want to make sure the work, what I think of that balance, it's more, I want to find the work that's meaningful to me and the work that I can get excited about and the work that I can look forward to. Now, are you going to look forward to every single part of your work or your job? Of course not. That gets back to grit. That's why you got to grind through because it's not all sunshine and unicorns. Even in a job you love, there's still parts of the job that you don't love, but you got to grind through it. And so, but to find the work that you do love, that you can find meaning in, and you can find dignity in, and you get excited about, that's where you want to balance. That's what you want to be working toward and looking for. And that's why back to number one, we want to make friends so we can find opportunities that might plug us into that thing. We want to ask a lot of questions. And then we're going to stick with something so that we can get some expertise that we might apply to something that we like more. Or maybe after making that run of 5 years, we find we fall in love with that. I worked, of all places, in an injection molding plastic manufacturing company. And now, years and years since I've left there, I still kind of get a smile on my face when I hear people talk about injection molding. It's kind of the weirdest thing. People are like, injection. I'm like, oh, I know injection molding. Or you meet somebody that used to work in one of those type of environments or manufacturers, and you have this kind of instant connection. But because you've done the thing, it might be the thing that you fall in love with. Not that like I've lived for injection molding, but just I know it. I feel comfortable. I feel like an expert. I've got some knowledge that's helpful to other people. And it was fun because once you get good at something, it makes it a lot more fun. Confidence or competence rather breeds confidence. We get more confident the better we get at something. And when you get really good at something, it gets fun to do. So, whatever it is that you make your run on, if you get good at it, you're going to feel good about it. And maybe it's the thing you start to fall in love with. And you think, boy, I would never thought I fell in love with injection molding manufacturing, but I do. I love it. I love the smell of plastic. I'm all about it. Who knew? It took me 10 years to figure that out. That might be you. Might be retail stores. It might be distribution. It might be a not for profit that you just took because a friend was working there and they say, hey, can you come and help us on a Saturday? And you fall in love with their mission. And now you just don't know. So, but find something that you can get excited about because that's what's going to fuel you through your life. Again, it doesn't have to be one thing. You can switch things as you go especially after you've made that run, you might pivot into some other areas and some other type of work, but you want to find something that you can enjoy doing. You don't want Sunday to be the worst day of the week because you dread Monday and Friday to be the best because you can't wait for the weekend. You want work that feels meaningful and is fun and so that you can fulfill your purpose and so that you can help other people so that you can feel good about yourself and what you're doing. You hear life is too short to be doing this. Life is too short to be doing this. That's some of the advice looking back. Like I wish someone had told me in my 20s, you're going to regret putting all these hours into this thing because it's meaningless. Now, sometimes it was meaningful. It was the grit and it was the grind. I need to get through it and make my run. But sometimes it's just like working hours for the sake of working hours because you saw other people working 60 hours. Like, oh, I guess that's what we do here. We work 60 hours. I don't really understand why. I'm not really getting a lot out of it. It's just what we do. Those hours are lost forever. And you don't want that. So here's another one of those balance things. You want to find the work that you can plunge yourself into, but life isn't just your work. And it's certainly not just your job, but it's a big part of it. And especially, a lot of people ask, the first question they'll ask when they meet you is, what do you do? We tend to identify ourselves by the work we do. So make sure it's work you feel good about. But again, always a balance here. There is life, there is vacation, there is family, there is other things outside your work, but it shouldn't be so opposite that it feels completely separate. That my work is my work and I hate it. It's my job. And over here is fun and the weekends and my family and the things I love. And I only do this to get this. I just would suggest that that's a bad place to live. So that's number four. And number five, it feels a little bit trite and cheesy, but looking back, I believe it. And that is enjoy the journey. It kind of ties to that last little bit of number four. Like life is short and you are going to burn hours doing something. And hopefully it's something that you find meaning in and that you can enjoy. But time is going to go by. And there's not really anything at the end. There's really no end that you get to where it's like, okay, now I'm done. I did my thing. I don't mean death, of course. Death is the end, and then you're done, at least in this world. But it's not as if you get to this point in your life where it's kind of come up like 65 and retirement is like this magic thing that we're going for. I just got to hang on till retirement. Well, then what? Then what are you going to do? Have you really thought through what that might look like? And I think of, some people have that job that they hate. Like, yeah, I can't wait till I'm 65. I can be done doing this job that I hate. Well, that's why I would suggest you not do that. But let's say you did do that. It feels kind of weird to want to get to this point where you stop. If you were a painter, would you think like, oh, I can't wait till that day I can stop painting? I don't mean like painting houses. I mean like painting paintings or some kind of creating art, like authors, right? You don't ever see the authors like, can't wait till I'm 65. I can stop writing these books that I hate. They're always going to write because they're writers. That's who they are. That's what they do. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that that's how it can work for you with your career. Like, I'm a leader. I lead people. I lead teams. That's what I do. I'm a merchant. I have a store and retail stores, and I sell products to people that need them. And that's who I am. That's what I do. I'm a merchant. And like, I'll never stop doing that. So find that thing that you can do that you can enjoy the journey along the way. And gets back to this idea of balance with the weekend and the weekdays. Yes, you want to make sure that you're doing the thing you love, but you're also focusing on your family and outside activities and things that are going to enrich you, and taking breaks so that you can get refreshed to come back in and do even more. And there's always that cycle and that balance, but it's a journey, it's a path. And there's kind of no finish line per se, except for, death. And so while you're on that path, enjoy that ride. It's not just the destination. It really is the journey. So think about that as you're thinking about these other things. Now, I know that feels like a lot, and in a lot of ways it was. In a lot of ways, it was just 5 things though, right? It's be friendly and make friends, and stick with something and make your run, put in more than you're getting out, give more than you get, do more than is expected, and then find the work that's meaningful so it can be work that you're producing rather than consuming, and it's not a job that you hate, but it's work that you love. And then finally enjoy that journey along the way. These aren't, if I spent more time on this, probably my only 5 things. I'll probably add to this. I might even switch things out and put some other things in the top 10. But these are the things that I came up with and wanted to share. So what I would love is for you to put into the comments below what you think about my 5 and what your 5 are. Maybe there's some things I'm missing or some other things that you have on your list, or when you reflect on your life and what you would tell your 20 something, what's that advice look like? So please put some of those comments in there, share with me and the other listeners and viewers what you think about and what advice you would give, and what maybe advice you received that was really good. And we'll talk about those on the next episode of the Clarity Advisor Show. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.